Hello, everyone, and welcome to our WISE program, Women, Wealth, and the Power of Advice. Special thanks to State Street Investment Management and Anna Paglia, our WISE Advisory Board member, for sponsoring tonight. I'm Angela Daly, WISE Board Chair. WISE is a 27-year-old nonprofit with a simple mission, award-winning nonprofit, let me add, with a simple mission: empowerment, financial empowerment for women of all ages and all backgrounds. We believe if you manage your money better, you're going to have more options, more opportunities in life, and very importantly, financial security for yourself and your family and in retirement. WISE achieves this mission by working with organizations such as Girl Scouts, Girls Inc., and universities. Today's program is part of our groundbreaking Tearing Down the Pink Wall series, which brings together the best and the brightest in finance to educate us and inspire all of us to reach our full potential. And that's exactly what we have today, the best and the brightest. We have Kristi Mitchem, co-founder and partners, and Anna Paglia, executive vice president, State Street. These two women have brought down that pink wall in spades. You're going to hear their financial insights and also some fascinating career journeys. Now, my great pleasure to introduce our moderator, a force in her own right, Consuelo Mack. Consuelo is one of the most admired and respected financial journalists in this country. Her credentials are impeccable. Wall Street Journal, CNBC, and now her own show on PBS, WealthTrack, whose aim is to help all Americans build and preserve their wealth. Consuelo is a fierce advocate for diversity in the workplace, especially for women in finance. So we're going to take questions at the end, put them in the Q&A box, not the chat box. And I hope all of you are going to join me in welcoming Consuelo and our fabulous panel. Over to you, Consuelo.
Thanks, Angela. And you might have guessed, number one, I'm delighted to be here. You might have guessed that Angela is a very dear friend of mine. So thank you, Angela, for that lovely introduction. And also, you should know a little bit about Angela, which is that she is an extraordinary PR and strategy person in the financial sphere. She also created this Pink Wall series of events, which started in 2018. So we're now in our 7th year. And she is the pro bono CEO, and I will stress that very clearly. She is a volunteer CEO, practically full-time, it seems, of WISE, which is a wonderful organization which is doing financial education and literacy for women and girls. That is one of her passions. And I might add that women, girls, and boys and men also benefit from WISE's efforts because she has two fabulous, financially savvy and independent young men who are her sons, who very much appreciate her efforts at home as well. So I'm delighted to be here. And we are here to discuss women, wealth, and the power of advice with two exceptional leaders in the financial industry. They are at the top of their professions. And there are bios that you all have available to you. I'm going to introduce them in just a minute briefly. But as Angela just said, we will be taking questions throughout, so make sure that you submit your questions. And this is a 3-part discussion. First of all, we are going to discuss their career journeys, which are fascinating and also will be helpful to all of us who are still progressing in our careers. And I count myself, even at my advanced age, in that number. And also, we're going to be discussing their career journeys. We're going to do a focus on retirement planning for women, a very important topic. They are experts in that as well, and a passion of both of theirs. And our final topic is why we need more women financial advisors. And so anyone out there in the audience who is considering changing their career path, becoming a financial advisor is a terrific career path, and we will find out why and what the opportunities are. So let me briefly introduce our panelists. Kristi Mitchem is founder and partner of & Partners, which is an advisor and an employee-owned wealth management firm, which is dedicated to reshaping the advisory landscape. And I know we have a lot of investment advisors in the audience, so they're going to be very interested in knowing what she's doing. It was founded just a few years ago. It added its 100th advisor practice in October. I'm sure Kristi will update us on that. There are probably more that have been added since then. And had, again, this is in October, had $50 billion of assets under management with those practices. Nearly 50% of the financial advisors who have joined Ann Partners are women. And Kristi is going to tell us why she has never been happier in her career. And that is after an incredible career, CEO of asset management divisions at both Wells Fargo and BMO. And before that, head of the defined contribution division of State Street. And at State Street, she created an ETF called She, which is an ETF investing in companies with women in top leadership positions at those companies. And she also led State Street's initiative to sponsor the Fearless Girl statue on Wall Street, facing up to the bull. And it is still on Wall Street. So I can't wait to hear Kristi's thoughts on her career journey, first of all, and the other two segments as well. Anna Paglia is EVP and Chief Business Officer at State Street Investment Management, where she develops long-term growth strategies for a vast domain of global ETFs, cash, defined contribution businesses, SMAs, and as well. So she's got a huge portfolio. Before that, she was global head of ETFs and index strategies and models at Invesco, and before that, a partner in an investment management firm and a fund counsel, in-house counsel at Barclays Global Investors. And as you might have guessed, she started out her career as a lawyer in Italy, and she is a recognized thought leader in ETFs. So let's get started, and I'm going to start with the career journey, and I'm going to ask each of you a series of the same questions. So I'll be interested to hear your perspectives. Kristi, I'm going to start with you. Stanford Business School to And Partners. What has been your primary motivation? What's your defining motivation of your career?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like most things, your motivation sort of changes and evolves, as you move through your career. I think I always had this like really incredible will to serve clients. I always loved client service. It gave me a lot of joy and fulfillment. And I would say, the more senior I got in my career, as I began to experience with different roles, that really morphed a bit from really focusing on client service to making a difference in the world and using finance as a force for good. So whether that is helping people build retirement security, as you suggested, or using investment dollars to drive needed change in corporate America, I think finance is a tool that offers us incredible opportunity to make our world a better place. And that is really what motivates me more than anything else today.
Put out my mute. Anna, same question to you. What has been your primary motivation professionally from the time you were a young lawyer in Rome?
Well, Consuelo, to me, this is personal. I think that financial markets cannot just be seen as a job. As a matter of fact, I always tell people in my team, if you are looking for a 9-to-5 job, if you are looking for a traditional job, maybe you are not in the right place. Because if you really want to make a change, if you really want to be successful in this industry, you have to make it personal. Financial markets are very much driven by two things. One, there are people depending on us. So the job that we do as asset managers can actually make a big difference between somebody sending a kid to college or not having enough money to pay for tuition, somebody retiring at the right time with dignity, or somebody not being able to retire, somebody buying that dream house or not being able to afford that particular investment. So what we do, we have to do with the weight of the responsibility over our shoulders. So big premise number one, there are people who depend on us. And big premise number two is we need to care. If you don't care about your clients, if you don't care about the outcome that you are producing for the industry, for your clients, for the community, you are not going to be successful at this job. So to me, this is very much a personal mission. It's not a 9-to-5 job. And I continue to look at what we do with those two lenses, through those two lenses in mind.
Kristi, you mentioned that goals change. And how have your goals changed over time? How have they evolved?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I think that, much of my career has become more purpose-driven than maybe it started out initially. I do remember like this weird thing, like driving to work one day and thinking, oh my gosh, mid-career, I work with like all these incredible people. This business is so fast-paced. It's so fun, but am I really making a difference in the world? And then I got the opportunity to actually work on the defined contribution business at BGI. And I realized that, as architects of these systems, as people who help design interventions that lead to financial security, we can make a huge difference. Auto features, default investing, all of these things help put people on the road to a secure retirement. And so I actually loved Anna's comment about, our responsibility being real. I think we do have to take that responsibility on, and I would say embracing that purpose, seeing it, and recognizing that finance wasn't just financially rewarding; it was a force for good. That was the aha for me.
And Anna, have you evolved as far as your goals and what you want to accomplish?
Well, Consuelo, if you can see from my resume, my career journey has not been linear at all.
Right.
Started in Italy, moved to London, moved to the US, and I'm a lawyer by trade. So how I ended up in finance is just a question that everybody asks me. My family still wonders how I ended up in finance. And I do think that this is where representation matters. And because we don't have so many women in the asset management financial industry, choices are the results of this lack of representation. Growing up in Italy, I did not have many examples of very successful female leaders in the financial services industry. As a matter of fact, I am the first one in my family to graduate from college. I'm the first one and the only one working in finance. And I did not see many examples out there driving me towards finance. When I was little, I would look at successful women, and they were always doctors, they were teachers, they were lawyers. And this is how I came up with the idea of one day I want to be a lawyer. And then finance found me when I was working in the asset management division of a law firm in Italy. And this is where my passion really exploded. And moving from law into finance, it was a big leap of faith. It was a big opportunity for me to really start focusing into something that I really, really cared about. And to me, Consuelo, the litmus test was always, my father, my family, my mom. We were a month-to-month family. We never had a portfolio. We never had enough money to create our own wealth, to invest, to, save for retirement. My dad retired 15 years ago with 85,000 euros, which for him was a gigantic amount of money. It was the most money he had ever seen all at once. But looking at that through the lenses of financial security is not really that much money, regardless of whether you are in a country where you have a pension from the state or not. So, I morphed into finance through different turns along the way. I took a number of leaps of faith. But the reason why I did that was because again, I really care about making a contribution to the industry to make sure that the wealth gap is bridged, to make sure that regardless of how much money you have to invest or how much time you have to create a portfolio, to create assets that will help you through retirement, somebody's there to help you along the way.
I'm hearing very strong motivation and focus from you, Anna. And I want to switch to leadership style. So, Kristi, how would you define your leadership style and how that's evolved?
Oh, goodness, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think, some of this connects back to kind of what drives you. And I think I was always someone who really felt that vision and purpose was an incredibly important part of leadership. When you start early on in your career, particularly if you grow up at a place like I did. So I grew up at Goldman Sachs. I think you rely a lot on pace setting type leadership styles, right? You just run and you assume that everyone is going to run along with you and they're not going to ask a lot of questions, right? When you kind of evolve in your career and you move to different organizations and recognize that people have different motivations, you recognize that you have to put a vision out there, right? You have to put a purpose out there that people can connect to, engage in, and become really passionate around. And so I would say, I think I moved from a very exacting, disciplined leader that was really focused on excellence to an exacting, disciplined leader that was focusing on excellence and purpose. And I don't think that's changed, right? I run a fantastic team today. It's much smaller than the teams that I've run in the past, but the devotion to doing what's right for clients, setting the bar high, and achieving our purpose, which is to bring the best of institutional quality investing to the retail investor, is really what drives everyone on our team.
Kristi, I mentioned in my introduction to you that you've never been happier professionally.
Yes.
What is it that explains that happiness? What's different at And Partners than in other roles that you've had?
Yeah, it's really simple. It's distributed ownership. We made a decision really early on when we started the company that everybody at the company would have a meaningful equity stake and no one would have too much equity, such that the only way that you win is if you win together. And it creates a level of camaraderie and shared purpose that I've honestly never had the opportunity to experience. I've always worked at really large organizations where people owned equity, but not in the same way, right? Not in the same way that you feel with a smaller entrepreneurial company. And I love my partners. I feel supported every day. And I get to make the right decisions for the right reasons. And that feels really good.
I bet it feels really good. And that's tremendous freedom, having come, as you said, from very large organizations, which are much more structured. Anna, talk to us about your leadership style. How would you describe it?
Well, Consuelo, I think that leadership school is always in session. I used to think that you are either born a leader or you will never become one. But my thinking has evolved. I think that you are born with certain qualities. There are certain soft skills that you either have or you don't, but you can refine those skills. And true leaders know how to evolve. They know how to evolve their style. They know how to evolve their thinking. More than anything else, the title of leader is earned every day. Is not something that you can self-proclaim for. To me, this is the same of saying, I'm a funny person. You are not funny. You have to tell a joke, people will laugh, and then somebody's going to say, oh, Anna is funny. So I will never say I am a leader. I'm going to act such that people will look at me and say, I'm going to follow that example. Because the truth is, everybody knows good when they see it. You know good behavior, you know bad behavior. And the way to become a leader is to absorb the good behavior, make it your own, and then double down on it, duplicate it. Right now, I like to be in a room with smarter people than me. I never think I'm the smartest one in the room. I like to hire people that I believe are so much better than me, so much smarter than me, that bring so much to the table. Because the moment you start learning is the moment you stop. The moment you stop learning is the moment you stop innovating. And the best way to learn is to have around you a group of incredibly smart and passionate people. And the other thing that I do is I like to have a little bit of tension, Consuelo. I don't like meetings where everybody agrees on things, because if everybody agrees, it means we are either really good and we have cracked the codes that nobody else has cracked and everybody agrees with it, which never happens, or we have evolved into that group thinking that is not really helpful. So I like to create a little bit of tension. I like it when people disagree. I like to have devil's advocate because I think that this healthy tension will push everybody to bring the best out of themselves and provide best outcome for our clients.
Final question in this segment, which I could go on forever about your career journeys, but that is, what difference has being a woman made in your career? Kristi, you first. Anna, you last.
Oh goodness. Well, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
I think if I look back at being a woman, I think a woman had certain disadvantages, and being a woman had certain disadvantages and certain advantages. One of the stories that I kind of always reflect on is I was maybe, let's say, probably like 4 or 5 years into my career at Goldman, and was starting to sort of move up, the ladder. And I started to get this feedback about how I needed to be more likable. And I remember coming back home to my husband and being like, people like me, right? Like, I'm likable. Aren't I likable? And I had never read all the research, right? So I didn't really know about the double bind. I didn't really understand this idea that as I was becoming more successful, I was de facto becoming less likable, and that had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with society and stereotype threat. So I think I suffered from all of those things, right? I think there are very clear barriers to women in the workplace. It would be impossible to look at the financial industry and the leadership within the financial industry writ large and not recognize that women are disadvantaged to a certain degree. Take for the example the fact that I think there's been one ever like Wall Street CEO, bank, financial investment bank CEO. And that was in 2021, right? So, I think that has hurt. Where it's helped me, I think, is that I was different. For my clients, there were a bunch of guys that were covering, and I was like the one woman that covered them. And I remember, again, kind of like funny stories. I was on the West Coast derivative desk, and, it was just as sort of the .com was starting to boom and vol trading was picking up. And, I became the largest give up trader of options at Goldman Sachs. And it was because I had this one client who traded like crazy, and he just loved to trade with me. And I think it was honestly simply because I wasn't like everyone else. I was different. I was entertaining. So I think there are ways in which, gender helps you. And I think there are ways in which gender hurts you. I guess in closing, I would say, I do believe that women are special leaders. And, sort of kind of coming back and going full circle on this whole conversation about leadership, I think women have very special traits that make them very, very good leaders. And I think a lot of it has to do with humility, listening, giving people space and freedom to express their ideas, and also the space and freedom to recognize when they have issues or problems. And I also think that women do a good job with that whole kind of vision and mission thing. So, I'm glad I'm a woman. I'm glad I'm a woman in finance, but it hasn't always been easy.
It's very personal to Anna's point that you can get personal, I'm sure, with and develop a relationship. I'm not sure how that works out with the typical trader at some of these firms. But Anna, what is the difference, do you think, in your career has being a woman made, and especially you've had a global career?
Consuelo, I'm smiling because what Kristi said really resonates with me. I have 3 brothers, and I have an army of male cousins. So I never felt there was anything different between being a girl or being a boy. I was just brought up in an environment in which it was just normal. It was the norm. But then when I was when I was promoted to my first senior executive role, I remember I had a meeting with a PR firm and my executive coach. And the first thing that they did was, we need to work on your brand. We want to make sure that we go out there and we build a brand of you as a woman leader. And I pushed back right away. I said, whoa, no, I'm going to stop you right there. I don't want to be put in a box. I don't want my brand to see I'm a woman, or I'm an immigrant, or I'm a short woman. Like, I don't want to be put in any type of boxes. So I want to build a brand where we go out there and we say, I'm a leader in the financial services industry who happens to be a woman, who happens to be an immigrant, who happens to be a mother. But I don't want to be put in that gender box. Well, guess what? I had my first meeting at the executive table. I looked around, it was about 20 people at that table, and I was the only woman. And I felt it. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to lie. I felt it. I went back home and I told my husband, it took me 45 years to find out I'm a girl. I didn't know what that meant before being in that meeting. But I will tell you, it helped me because I am different. And I think that if you use that difference in a healthy way, it's going to benefit you. I was different. I had an accent. People had to, I'm sure nobody noticed. I'm going to say it. I have an accent. So everybody was paying a little more attention because they didn't quite get, what did she say? What did she just say? Does it make sense? Do I have to say yes? Am I going to approve this? Let me pay attention to that. So people were paying attention. People were listening to me no matter what I was saying. So that difference, I found a way to channel that difference to my advantage.
Let's go to your favorite topics, Kristi and Anna, and that is retirement planning for women. And so, Kristi, let me start out with you. I mean, this has been a huge interest of yours. What is the state of retirement planning for women in this country?
Well, I think that obviously we've made some massive improvements in overall retirement security if we look back really since the mid-2000s. And I think, as I sort of referenced earlier, with the 2005 Pension Protection Act, the auto enrollment reg, the wide adoption of auto features, we have really made a huge difference in the amount of dollars that are being placed into the retirement system. And we've also ensured that when those dollars are in the system, they're actually invested in well-diversified defaults that have really the power from an equity allocation perspective to drive the needed returns that people need to get enough money to retire with dignity and security. So I think, whether you're a woman or whether you're a man, I think, access to 401k plans has broadened, the quality of those plans has increased. And again, the way that they work in an automated way to help people overcome the inertial barriers to saving has really been quite remarkable. The one thing that gives me a lot of pause, though, particularly for women, is really this question of financial confidence. And obviously, we continue to see big gaps in financial literacy. And by the way, those gaps exist even in younger cohorts. But we also continually see that women feel less comfortable making large financial decisions. As I was sort of prepping for this discussion, I was kind of interested to see how those numbers have changed. And there has actually been improvement. So if we ask the question to women in the US of different age cohorts, and we say, are you comfortable making a large financial decision? In 2018, about 43% of all women said that they were comfortable making large financial decisions, right? So that means that 57% of them were not. If we look at where that number is today, that number is about 63%, which still means you've got 37% or over a third of women, irrespective of age, in the United States that are not comfortable making financial decisions. And I think that is an issue that we need to solve, right? We need to get women more comfortable with finance overall. We need to get women engaged in talking about finance, either with their advisor or as a community, so that financial terms and language become much more accessible to them, as opposed to something that feels scary and foreign.
And Anna, would you agree with her assessment of where the state of women's retirement, number one, planning, and also I'll ask you the follow-up question, which would be, what are the kind of strategies or what are the most important strategies that you are advising at State Street, and especially for investment advisors, what they adopt?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question because When you look at the women's journey to retirement, women are unfortunately facing some challenges that are very unique. Because first of all, we have a longer life expectancy. So I remind my husband of that every single day. I'm going to outlive him by at least 8 years. We have a pay gap. Data shows that regardless of all the progress that has been made over the last decade or so, there is still a pay gap between what men bring home at the end of the month and what women bring home. And then there are career interruptions because we do have kids, we go on maternity leave, we are caregivers and caretakers, and at least once in our journey, in our career journey, every one of us is going to experience some of these interruptions. Consuelo, I'll give you an example. My best friend who is in London, she had a daughter. She took 2 years off from work, and then she decided to get back in the industry. And this industry is a little unforgiving. So when you exit the industry for 1 year or 2 years, it's really, really hard to get back in. And she didn't want to get back in the industry for a lower level position. So it took her another 2 years to get a job that she thought was really representative of her capabilities. That means she was out of the market for 4 years. So for 4 years, she did not earn a paycheck. She did not save for retirement. And these are the challenges that really affect women more so than men. And if you put all of that together, our data shows that women retire with between 26 and 30% less wealth than men. And they have lower confidence. As Kristi said, our data shows that only 30% of women feel very optimistic or extremely optimistic about retirement readiness. So there is definitely an income need. And what we did, which is a tool, is a solution that we feel incredibly proud of. And by the way, this industry is small and good people are always in the same circles, because I learned that this is actually a solution that Kristi created, that Kristi invented back in the day. We built something called IncomeWise, which is a tool that provides individuals the ability to buy institutional deferred annuity with a guaranteed income that starts at the age of 78, which means you can save for retirement now, and then once you retire, you don't have to worry about your longevity. You don't have to worry about how much money you have or you are going to need during the accumulation phase. This tool takes care of that and gives you the certainty and the dignity that you need going into the last phase of your journey.
And so IncomeWise is a State Street program that's a target date funds. Is that right?
That's correct.
Which has an annuity feature at the end of as you're in retirement and along in years. And Kristi, you were one of the really primary advocates. You mentioned the default option instead of having to choose, do I participate in a 401k plan? Instead of now it's automatic. You've got to opt out, which has been, as you said, a huge benefit. So what are some of the solutions that you are advocating for your retirement, your advisors? And is annuitization one of them?
Yeah, I would say that certainly all of our advisors use some form of insurance for some of their clients in retirement solutions or otherwise. And I think, like Anna mentioned, annuities are so important and in many cases, I think, undervalued as a financial tool in terms of their just sort of overall worth in helping people solve financial questions. People always say, is there any free lunch in investing? And I say, well, there's really only two. One is the fact that you get paid interest. I said, and the second is the fact that pooling is a beautiful thing, right? And so I think, again, as we sort of think about the health of the U.S. financial system overall, and one of the reasons why State Street created this particular problem is that they recognize that there is a need to help people manage longevity risk. And in order to do that in a way which makes sense financially. Pooling is a really, really important component. So structuring that annuity as an advanced life annuity, an ALA, as Anna mentioned, that starts obviously when an investor reaches the age of 78, gives a defined contribution saver and later spender the ability to have some flexibility around how they spend those dollars, until they reach 78 or 80 years old. And then sort of security, knowing that those annuity payments will kick in, as they move beyond the median life expectancy, which is, to me, a really exciting product.
Right. Is there another strategy or product that you're using at And Partners that the various, again, investment advisors are that you think is particularly appropriate for women?
I don't know that I would say there's anything that I think that we are using that is sort of special for women. I think we use many of the same sort of tools and techniques. The biggest thing, the difference between a target date fund and what you get with an individual investor, advisor, which of course is what And Partners is you get this really customized, tailored individual advice, right? And so that allows you to make decisions around whether and when you might want to annuitize. It allows you to use different investment vehicles to manage your tax liabilities in a more customized, individualized way. I think that's the biggest difference. Not so much that the tools are different, but the way those tools are employed is in a way that really is a custom fit for you, because you have this direct one-to-one relationship with your investment advisor.
And Anna, one of the things, I'm listening to you as well is that women do outlive men, as you've reminded your husband many times, as I have reminded my husband too, Anna. It's just amazing. But at any rate, as far as women advisors, which is the next segment of our conversation, is, do women advisors make a difference? And how do you attract women advisors? How are you doing that at State Street?
Well, women advisors definitely make a difference, and you always go back. I always go back full circle to where I started, which is representation matters. We see in our research that 60% of women say that if they were given a choice, they would rather work with a female advisor. And that's because women associate money not just with outcome. Women associate the concept of money with purpose and experience. And the women also tend to be very loyal. So again, going back to our research, what we have found out is that 46% of women have been with their advisors for more than 10 years. And that is compared to 36% of men. So there is a big gap, there is a big difference there that proves women tend to be much more loyal. And 30% of clients are actually referred by women. So not only are they loyal to their advisors, but they also are more likely to refer friends to advisors. Now, there are also reasons why women do not like to work with advisors. Some of them said fees are an impediment. Not knowing where to start is another impediment, or the perception of not having enough money to start. That is also an impediment. And, women also said in, the research and the data that we have collected that they lack trust in financial institutions. So having more women in an advisory role is definitely going to help bridge this gap. And the way we do that, the way we try to bridge this gap is definitely by putting ourselves out there. Representation matters. Participating in events that are tailored to women, made for women, designed to spread the word about savings, about wealth, about financial markets for women is something that we believe is very powerful and is going to help us spread the word. The other thing is acting and leading by example. We do have, our CIO, who is responsible for managing $5.5 trillion of assets, is a woman. Our CEO, the CEO of State Street Investment Management, is a woman.
Mhm.
So leading by example is something that we feel very strongly about. But if we look at the big numbers, this trend is inevitable. This is something that whether you are an investor, whether you are on the buy side, on the sell side, whether you are managing money or providing investment advice, you have to pay attention to that. By 2030, we estimate that about $34 trillion of assets globally will be in the hands of women. We are about to witness the largest transfer in wealth that this economy has ever witnessed. And 60% of the decisions about the transfer in wealth is going to be made by women. So this is definitely something that, regardless of where you play in the ecosystem, you are going to have to pay attention to.
Kristi, why are there so few women investment advisors? And I seem to remember that the number has remained fairly static for a long time. A minority of financial advisors are women. And, and how do you think that we can attract more women into the financial advisory business?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you're right. The statistics are low. If we look overall, about 23% of advisors across every channel in the US are women. If we look specifically at sort of the wirehouse and brokerage sort of part of that business, which of course we're hybrid and partners, that's sort of the world that we inhabit. That number is between 13 and 16%, and it's really stayed there for the last 10 to 15 years. There's been very, very, very little movement in terms of sort of women coming into this business. And that's why we're so excited at And Partners, because we have such a large cohort of women that have joined us. You mentioned 50% of the people in the field. Actually, 40% of all our teams are led by women. Wow. So kind of coming back to this sort of wonderful premise that Anna was talking about, it's like, how do you drive change more globally by ensuring that you represent and live that change within your own organization? So those statistics are really exciting to us. And I think it's largely because of many of the things that Anna sort of is highlighting. Like, we recognize today about 30% of all retail assets in the US are directed by women. By 2030, that number is going to be 45%. So the number of women that are directing assets because they own and manage the wealth of themselves and their family is really increasing over time. And so it's by necessity, if you think about it, if women have a preference to engage with more female investors, you need to see some gender change in the complexion of the industry. So the question becomes, how do we drive that? Which is kind of connected to your earlier question, why are there so few women in the advisory business? And I think it comes down to really a couple of things that, some of which I think are changing, which will help us attract more women. First of all, if we think back to sort of the origins of the wealth business, right, it really was a brokerage business. It was more about trading than it was about investing. The biggest shift that we've seen really in the last 15 years in the wealth industry is that more and more assets are actually moving out of brokerage accounts and into advisory accounts, right? The orientation is becoming less about trades, more about planning, intentional planning, and creating an investment that matches with that life plan for a client. And that was a seminal shift, right? And I think that is something that could attract more women. We consistently find that not only do women investors engage around certain themes, some of which Anna mentioned, which include purpose, but they're also very, very long-term in their orientation. So this shift from brokerage to investing, I think, will help. The second big issue that I think we have, again, largely because of the historical roots, is that in some ways, women choose industries where they can see other women well represented, right? And so that is a challenge for us. So if you start with 13% or 16%, how do you attract and get more women to actually see this, as a career that would really be interesting for them and fulfilling and rewarding? And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited about doing this webinar with you today, right? I think changing that is all about getting the word out there. The wonderful thing about financial advisory, the provision of financial advice, it's a great career for women, right? You're an entrepreneur, you build your own business, and you have an immense amount of control around lots of things that women fundamentally struggle with, such as work-life balance. But we just have to get the word out. And then the last thing that I would say, and I know I've harped on this before, but at the end of the day, we've got to move the needle on financial literacy writ large. The way that we're going to get more more women into finance, more women into the advisory portion of finance is to get women believing that they understand finance and that it's interesting to them and something that they can engage proactively.
Right, which is why we're here. And I'm looking at Angela, so I'm sure we've got some questions from our audience. So that I'm motivated. I'm hearing you. I'm hearing the passion.
We do have to move into we should have allowed more time for this because the discussion is really, really so interesting. And I would love to play off of both Anna and Kristi and plug WISE more, but we're going to get right into the questions here. And Brendan Curran, who is head of retirement at State Street, is going to field these questions. Maybe we'll go an extra 5 minutes past 4. So if anyone has to leave, we understand. And then we'll close it out at about 5 after 4.
Super. Thanks, Angela and Kristi and Anna. Obviously, great to see you, and so fortunate to work today with Anna and Kristi, a longtime mentor. Albeit, I'm a little hurt that you're having more fun today than when we were working together, but I won't take that personally. Going through some of the questions, like maybe one that just trying to summarize a few and put them together is just around individuals that are looking to enter into the financial advisory space, whether they're coming right out of college, trying to transition mid-career. And I think maybe there's sort of like a two dimensions to the question. And maybe Kristi, I'll start with you. One is like, what is that attitudinal like perspective they need to bring to be successful? And then 2, like what's the practical experience that people need to have or to develop over time to be successful and get off on the right foot?
Yeah, well, I think that's a fabulous question. And maybe I'll start with the latter half of that, which is really what is the experience that you need to be a financial advisor? And I think it's really important to point out that the financial advice industry is really an apprenticeship-based business, right? So if we look at our teams at And Partners, we find that about 95% of those teams are multi-generational. So they have a first-gen older advisor, a second generation that's sort of coming up behind that advisor, such that, both clients and families have longevity with respect to their financial relationship, right? And so again, when you think about Anna's sort of statistic on the length of relationships that people tend to have with their financial advisors, really it does need to be kind of multi-generational in its structure. And so that's the first thing that I would say. I do think it's an apprenticeship culture, and I think that creates really just a wonderful opportunity, again, for women to come into the business, to find a senior leader that they connect with and they enjoy, because many financial advisors are aging out of their career and they are looking for successors. They are looking to build that sort of next generation. So I would say that's critical too. In terms of what you can do to prepare to be a financial advisor, I mean, to be honest, I think there are many different paths that you could take. We have financial advisors that have been entrepreneurs. We have financial advisors that have been on Wall Street. We have financial advisors that have been in private wealth or banking. There are lots of different things that you can do to prepare for the business. At the end of the day, I think it's really around 3 simple things that you need to be successful. Again, first off, on some level, you need to be excited about planning and investments, right? I think most people who are really, really good at what they do really love kind of the material and the things that they engage on every day. And again, there has to be some financial component and understanding to it, but it can also be geared like a lot around planning. So first of all, is just sort of loving the base aspects. The second thing that I would say is a will to serve, right? At the end of the day, I think that is the thing that differentiates everybody at And Partners. Whether you sit at the home office or whether you are an advisor, the client always comes first. And that level of urgency around client centricity is what I think makes advisors really, really good. And then the last thing that I would say is you have to be willing to adapt and evolve. I mean, one of the really fascinating things that we've seen in financial advice over the course of the last 5 to 7 years is the advent of fintech. The technology is just getting better and better. And the advisor's ability to leverage that technology, including a bunch of new applications that are really powered and generated with AI, is going to be a game changer. So for me, it's really those kind of 3 things. You got to love the core material, right? Do you like finance? Do you like planning? Do you like engaging with clients on those specific issues? 2, are you obsessed with customer service? In which case you will be a very, very good advisor. And then 3, are you willing to sort of evolve and change and use and leverage new technology as it becomes available to increase your efficiency and also enhance the quality of what you deliver to your clients in terms of advice and planning?
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, especially the last one on the technology. It's funny as you go through your career, at least for me personally, it's hard to maintain that motivation to keep up with that technology. It's easy to sort of get placid over time. And so continuing to sort of lean into that change as part of your own career journey is so important. I'd be curious, Anna, for your perspective as well, because as we think of this almost from concentric circles, you have the individual, you have the advisors like and partners, and then you have the investment organizations like State Street that sit around and closely partner with organizations like Kristi. As you think about an individual female coming up through State Street, like again, similar question from like an attitudinal or from like a motive perspective, but also from a practical perspective. What do you see as keys to building a successful career?
Well, Brendan, first of all, get yourself out there. When you say financial services, many people think it's scary. I know of, especially women, it is true what they say about women that if we don't think we can do something, we don't try. We don't want to risk. We want to have all the answers before taking a leap of faith. Financial services are a lot of different things. And you can enter the industry in the buy side, in the sell side. You can be an advisor, you can be an accountant, you can be a lawyer in financial services. There are so many aspects of financial services that I think everybody can feel represented and can have a home. So get yourself out there. There are things that you either love or hate, and you are going to know it right out of the gate. If you hate it, there is no training, there is no mentorship, there is nothing that you can find that is going to change your mind. But when you find that segment of the industry that you love, boy, you're going to be hooked in for life. So try to find that part of the industry that really draws you in and lean on others. I think that, Hollywood is doing a disservice to us because if you watch movies or if you watch TV shows, this industry is portrayed as a cutthroat industry, where in reality, it's not. People want to teach. People want to have people want to find young talent where they can pass on the knowledge, where they can transfer their clients, where they can really build an ecosystem that is going to allow them to build a legacy. This is not just acting in the moment. It's not just serving one client in the moment. If I asked everybody around this table what their bigger dream is by serving in this industry, it's all about building a legacy. It's all about doing things that are going to survive them. Help their clients. I mean, if I think about what our mission is, what my mission is, and yours too, Brendan, your mission, I'm sure, if I were to ask you, would be to build a legacy, to help clients build wealth, not only for themselves, but for their kids, for the other generations to come. So there are so many opportunities in this industry to really walk in, make a difference, be proud of what you do. And the ability to learn and humility is going to be core and center to this effort, because listening and being able to receive the lessons and act on that is going to be paramount. But the industry, this is an incredible industry. If you walk in it with the right attitude, with the right passion, with the right conviction, this is an incredible industry for everybody, not just women.
Maybe time for one last, it's a quick question, but again, I think it picks on the trajectory that a lot of the questions are coming in around. Sort of where is the growth, where is the opportunity? And I think you've helped everyone understand sort of what's those foundational skills, where are the skills to build on. But when I think about, Anna, where your career started, early days into the ETF industry, really tied into something that had a tremendous tailwind. Kristi, obviously, so many interesting things, but defined contribution, getting in PPA, things like that, a lot of tailwind. When you look out over the next 3 to 5 years, I mean, maybe Anna, starting with you, like where do you see the tailwind from in the industry as someone that's starting out or thinking about a career change to potentially become that expert in the way that you've become an expert in ETFs?
Well, technology. Technology, I think Kristi mentioned that before. Technology is a big tailwind. Many people look at technology as something to be afraid of. You look at Gen AI and the fear around we are all going to become obsolete and the Gen AI is going to take our job. Financial advisors are going to disappear. In reality, if you use technology wisely, this is going to take care of so much stuff that occupies your day and leaving you with the opportunity to serve your clients doing something that really counts, that really matters. So I think, use technology in a very wise way. You are going to be so much better. The iPhone moment, I keep talking about this iPhone moment. We have not seen the iPhone moment in financial industry yet. It has not happened yet. Transformation has not happened to the same level that we are witnessing in other sectors and industries, but it will happen. And if we use technology as we should in a wise way, this is going to give us a very big advantage as portfolio managers, as advisors, as investors, spearheading into the next decade of investment.
Super. Kristi, anything you would add from a tailwind perspective? I mean, I do think technology is something that you already touched on, but anything else come to mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, like one of the things that we're benefiting from is this whole trend towards independence, from bigger to smaller, kind of this whole recognition that bigger isn't better, better is better. And it's enabled a lot through technology, but I think it's a really important trend. And I think the one thing that this trend towards independence and the greater freedom to use more investment tools and more technology is going to bring is kind of circling back to a comment that I made earlier. It's just going to be a bigger focus on individualized investment advice. So I think you're going to continue to see more move into SMAs, more move into direct indexing, and it's just going to become, again, more tailored to clients' very specific reality. And along with that, I think a lot of the technological advances that will come will better connect everything that you're doing in the investment side of the house with what's happening from taxation to estate planning to giving. So it's going to be more integrated. So for me, it's like those two things. It's going to be more individualized. It's going to be more integrated. And that's being enabled by this move to independence, which frees people up to adopt and use technology in a better, more leveraged way.
Well, I think, Brendan, do we want to do one more question, a quickie?
That was the only one maybe I'll
We don't have to. We can close it. Now, first of all, we got to say that we need another session. So I hope that Kristi and Anna are up for part 2. Consuelo, what do you think? I mean, there's so
absolutely. I'm game.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a fascinating.
Fascinating.
Yes, and our Pink Wall events, part of the mission, not only inspiration and education, is to attract more women into finance. It's always been one of our core of missions, and we do this by going to universities and talking to graduate students, undergraduate students, just by listening to you guys and seeing these role models. We believe really helps bring more women into the business. So I want to thank both of you. Really, you did a fantastic job. Really wish. I've known Kristi for decades. Anna is a new friend, and as I said, another advisory board member of ours. And I should mention that Consuelo is also an advisory board member and has been critical to our Pink Wall events since their inception. So a part of what makes it really special. So thanks to all for participating. Thanks to all of our listeners. We hope you'll go to wiseinvestors.org, sign up. It's free, and you'll hear about all of our upcoming events. And in the meantime, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and hope to see you again soon. And really, a heartfelt thanks to all of you.